Lift the Loft live, and I was hoping to get my friend Thick Shades in here, but I looked and saw that I think he's starting a hangout at 4 p.m. So of course he won't be here. So that's a shame, but he'd probably see this. And I do this video for the purpose, as it says in the subject, to discuss the Mandela effect and how silly it is. Now, there are a plethora of more examples that somebody would give of the Mandela effect, and I encourage those who believe in the Mandela effect to provide me with more examples other than the ones that I'm going to present today. I'm going to present 3 just because those were the easy ones for me to find ridiculous immediately without a lot of effort. If you don't know what the Mandela effect is, my understanding of it is that based on the Bible, if you're familiar with the Bible that talks about God sending a strong delusion, that there are Christians out there that believe that the strong delusion is being sent now because they believe we're in the end times, and that strong delusion is evidenced by God changing the words of movies, changing the words of books, changing the words of cereal boxes. And if that's making you scratch your head, I hope it is, because it's strange and it's weird. That section of the Bible talking about the strong delusion, and I'll look at it real quickly. I didn't prepare to bring that one to actually talk about scripture in this, but I will look at it. So if I put God sends strong delusion, I'm sure, yeah, it brings 2 Thessalonians 2:11. And let us share the screen, shall we, so that you could see the basis of this. 2 Thessalonians 2, and it's better that we just go from 2, I think. That'll be better. Starting in 11. Concerning the coming of our Lord Jesus and our being gathered together to him, we ask you, brothers, not to be quickly shaken. This is Paul talking to the people of Thessalonica. Not to be quickly shaken in mind or alarmed, either by a spirit or a spoken word or a letter seeming to be from us, probably, but it isn't, to the effect that the day of the Lord has come. They don't want anyone to believe that the Lord has come yet. Don't let anybody deceive you in any way. For that day will not come until the rebellion comes first and the man of lawlessness is revealed. That would be, of course, the Antichrist, the son of destruction, who opposes and exalts himself against every so-called God or object of worship, so that he takes a seat in the temple of God, proclaiming himself to be God. And let's keep going. For the mystery of lawlessness is already at work. Only he who now restrains it will do so until he is out of the way. And then the lawless one will be revealed, whom the Lord Jesus will kill with the breath of his mouth and bring to nothing by the appearance of his coming. The coming of the lawless one is by the activity of Satan, with all power and false signs and wonders, and with all wicked deception for those who are perishing because they refuse to love the truth and so be saved. Now that's important. Because it says, so who refused to know the truth, to love the truth, and so be saved. And that truth that a Christian knows that we are all saved on is that Jesus Christ is God. Jesus Christ died and rose again for us. For God so loved the world, he gave his only son, that whoever should believe in him will not perish but have eternal life. The simple version and the easy English that I understand is believe on the Son, believe in Jesus and what he did on the cross to die for taking the penalty of our wicked ways, of our sin upon himself, so that we can be righteous through him who believe that he is God and he did exactly those things, that he died on the cross, and not only died on the cross, but defeated death by rising again, so that he can take all those who believe in him and believe in that gospel to heaven and eternity with him, in relationship with him. That's the simple form of the gospel. Really, really easy. And that's what's being talked about. So let's go back to sharing this before we get into the meat of the Mandela effect, which is what I want to do. That the next line after those who refuse to love the truth and so be saved, therefore God sends them a strong delusion. He sends the strong delusion upon those who refuse to love the truth and so be saved, those who do not know the gospel. Therefore God sends them a strong delusion so that they may believe what is false, meaning everything besides Jesus being the Messiah and being the one that's come to pay our penalties, in order that all may be condemned who do not believe the truth, that truth of the gospel, but had pleasure in unrighteousness, that want to live in their own life, if you will, I should say, looking into the camera, those who want to live their own life as if they are little gods, like the ones discussed in Psalm 82, the ones who believe they have all control of their life and they have no need for the big G God. They can do it all on themselves. And those folks, like me, I get that way on occasion, are wicked. So, and in need of Jesus. So let's go back. I'm going to take away 2 Thessalonians, which is the basis of the Mandela effect. And then I am going to cover the first. And I think we'll start that with a Google search of history of the Fruit Loops logo. Now, the first claim that I've seen that is ridiculous is the idea that God has sent a delusion changing the name of the cereal box, Fruit Loops. A little bit of background perhaps on Fruit Loops first would be necessary. And the debate in Mandela effect, they claim that Fruit Loops is now changed, F-R-O-O-T, Fruit Loops with the two loops as the O's, when in fact it originally was F-R-U-I-T, that it was spelled F-R-U-I-T and then loops. And God's evidence of God's strong delusion that the end times have come, God has decided, according to the Mandela effect, to change the name of that cereal box. So I want to look at first the history of Fruit Loops. So thank God for Google, right? So usually that sends us to Wikipedia, as it does in this instance as well. And you'll see that the question was, when was Fruit Loops made, which is what we're going to start. Kellogg's introduced Fruit Loops in 1963. Notice how they use F-R-O-O-T, which I find interesting. Originally that's a part of God's strong delusion, according to Mandela effect users. Originally, it talks about the color of loops, and then blue and green, purple, and blue were added in the 1990s. That was not a Mandela effect. Those were not in the original version. Now, the interesting thing here is we see examples all over here of I will call it a common misconception that it's spelled F-R-U-I-T. So the best way, I guess, for us to look at the history of the Fruit Loops logo, there's evidence of it out there, right, would be to move on and let's look at images for the history of the Fruit Loops logo. Now we see, let me just type images here. These are all images, allegedly, of the Fruit Loops logo and its evolution. We see some stuff that's irrelevant in here, but see, so we have Fruit Loops. We can see F-R-U-I-T. We see another example in this image, F-R-U-I-T, another example in this image of F-R-U-I-T. Those are the only references to that form of Fruit Loop. We see some interesting things here. These are the old logos that we'll talk about, I think, a little bit later. But you can see they're spelled F-R-O-O-T. Here's another one right there. But let's look at those references that are these pictures with F-R-U-I-T. Is that a true image of what it once looked like? Well, it looks like in this case, this goes to a Mandela effect video. So this one is not proof that the name has changed, because that's merely a photoshopped picture, or at least that's my allegation. But we don't see any pictures by themselves showing fruit. This is one, the only references, another one, Mandela effect. And the third reference in the Google image search here, right here, is, I don't know what this is. Fruit Loops, as some of us remember. This one I haven't seen. Let's find out. Hopefully it's not porn. Oh, it's Reddit, which of course is the end-all be-all. And of course, we're talking about the Mandela effect. So all references that are here to FRUIT, these pictures that we have of past Fruit Loops, here's a probably the original right here. The only reference we have to FRUIT is a Mandela effect related video, or, and in the other instance was a Reddit comment. Now we can look at the brand evolution right here, which is kind of a cool graphic to look at. It's it's also on that Reddit page, but let's just look at the image itself. Introduced it, as we say, in 1963, and you'll see all of the references here to FROOT loops. There is no reference to FRUIT. The claim of a Mandela effect person is that this is the Fruit Loop. Now, when I was a child, I remember, and I'll look back into the camera. When I was a child, I remember Fruit Loops as FROOT. FRUIT, in fact, looks strange on there. It doesn't look like it belongs. So, if we do a YouTube search a little bit further, and I'll share, to actually look at what I remember when I was a child, which would be, how about a video of a commercial from the 1970s? And guess what? It's there. So why don't we look at it and then discuss what the claim of the Mandela effect must be. Now here we are on a YouTube search for Fruit Loops commercial 1970s. And we have a commercial, as I remember it, 1975. Let's watch. A minute long.
Sorry. Ouch! Gee, getting somebody to have breakfast with is sticky business.
Cheer up, my porcupine pal. A fruitful breakfast will share right now. Follow your nose. It's always nose.
Ouch! I smell it. Kellogg's Fruit Loop cereal.
Wait a minute.
Oranges, lemons, cherries, and other natural flavors. Start with a balanced breakfast.
Now, you see, this is 1975, and it says Fruit Loops, plain as day. Now, there are other examples, and I guess just for overkill in this one, I will throw in, well, let's look at quickly 2 or 3. Let's look at all these. This is 31 seconds. Toucan Sam at the haunted house.
He follows his nose. He always knows.
His nose, it always knows.
Wherever it goes.
Uh-oh. Kellogg's Fruit Loop cereal.
Oh,
Real fruit.
what's that? It's the FROOT. So let's go back and look in 1980.
Hey, good buddy, I'm here to pick up a load of hits. Class 3 meat out for fruit. Seen any? Right, trucking tandem fruit flavors you see shifting to first and follow my lead. Follow my nose. Go to the it always knows. Breaker, I smell orange flavor and cherry flavor.
There's fruit again. There's 81. We could just go on and on and on. So rather than go on and on and on, let's talk about what Mandela effect must be asking us to believe. It's asking us to believe that those references that we see in the many commercials that occurred in the 70s and 80s, I think I showed 3 or 4, that show the FROOT label, that God, in his sending of a delusion, I don't know, through his angels, his holy video editing producers, I'm not sure what the claim is, and that's why I was hoping that a strong proponent of the Mandela effect, Thick Shades, would be in here, that God must have, is editing those. That what we just saw right now is a strong delusion sent by God. Now, here's a problem that I have from a biblical perspective, because I'm a Christian and I believe Jesus Christ is Lord. I believe he died and rose again for me and for all those who suffer. and for all those who are wicked and will suffer in eternal hell, whatever your definition of that is, that without Jesus, that's where you go. That's plain and simple. And so those who are under a strong delusion, as 2 Thessalonians indicated, were those who do not believe in the truth, do not believe in that truth of the gospel. So the strong delusion is not supposed to be sent upon believers. It's supposed to be sent on those who don't believe. And yet it's pretty obvious to me that Fruit Loops has always been spelled F-R-O-O-T since its inception, 1963, and God isn't changing that. And to say that I can't see it is to say that I'm not a believer, which is ridiculous. So that's point one. Now, I will go explain real quickly what it is, in fact. It's a common misconception. Now, the quickest list that I found of common misconceptions, I'll screen share real quickly, and we might look at this later, but you can do a list of common misconceptions from Wikipedia, and you can see they're at least 100 here, and probably more. Historical, products, movies, transportation, psychology, physics, mathematics, material science, with the nutrition, food and drink, plants, modern history, Islam, sports, religion, literature, music, movie quotes, list of misquotations. It's a perfect example of many of these things. And since it's called a common misconception, it means many people have it. Many people, through the relay of information, through media, through what things that we watch, they get taken into the modern parlance, if that's the word, into modern conversation, and that misconception is believed to be the truth. It's that simple. It's not a God delusion. It's not a Mandela effect. It's not anything like that. And so we move on to the next point. This is number 2. 1 is Fruit Loops, and 2 is a Mandela effect claim. This one is probably the one that I laugh the most at, because of the example this video shows. And I believe that the major proponent, Thick Shades, of the Mandela effect that I know of online has used this as an example. He's used all 3 of these as an example. There's a third example I'll give as I explain. And the second one deals with a book that I read in college, Interview with the Vampire, written by Anne Rice. I have the book, not here at work, but I actually have a copy of the book that I've looked at that says Interview with the Vampire. And the claim is by Mandela effect proponents that everybody knows, of course, that it's Interview with a Vampire, right? That's what you say. And in fact, if you asked me before this Mandela effect stuff came up, I'd say, yeah, it's Interview with a Vampire. You wouldn't think about it, because Interview with the Vampire, I think, sounds... for us, it doesn't sound as natural on the tongue as a vampire. It's really simple. But the claim is, among Mandela effectites, is that it's changed, that God is sending a strong delusion because he finds this important enough that we need to, that non-believers need to see this. For some reason, I don't know. There's no real explanation of that other than I'm guessing, and I wish Thick Shade was in here, I'm guessing that it's that evidence of a strong delusion, when you can see it happening, that you can say, oh, it's the end times and God is confirming it for me. I'm not sure. But anyway, let's go to a video that's just 33 seconds long that deals with the Interview with a Vampire, Interview with the Vampire claim. And I find this most enlightening. I'm going to stop it before it gets to the end, and you'll see why. So here we go. Screen sharing again on the Interview with the Vampire by the YouTube user Mandela Effect is Real. Okay, and proof of the Mandela effect. So this is really good. We better watch this. Listen up.
It's another blockbuster year for Hollywood, the motion picture Interview with a Vampire.
Ooh, but look, we're seeing movie things that say Interview with a
Vampire.
Oh my God, what? We didn't remember it wrong.
Elliot Goldenthal for Interview with a Vampire.
No, I needed to stop it a little earlier. This is where I'm going to stop it, right? Oh, that's good. Now, here's something really fun, because what the Mandela effectite here wants us to believe as we're watching this is that all these people who are saying, here's Hugh Grant, and her name slips me. She's the one from Groundhog Day. It's an interesting movie to bring up considering the Mandela effect. But anyway, and they're trying, she says here that I interrupted, she will say interview with a vampire, just like David Letterman did. But note, in this is supposed to be proof of the Mandela effect, that God is coming out and sending a strong delusion. Even though all these people are saying interview with a, that this picture, she said a, but the picture shows the. This was obviously an Oscar nomination. I don't believe they won for Interview with the Vampire. And it shows Interview with the Vampire on the screen. Apparently, God forgot in his attempt to give that strong delusion. He forgot to holify, to wholly edit this particular portion. I don't know. Maybe Thick Shades can explain that to me, or some other Mandelaite. Might be interesting to see, but that's a little strange and a little bit silly, and it makes me laugh, and is second proof as to the silliness of the Mandela effect. Now, the third one is fun too, because it deals with Star Wars, and we all like Star Wars, right? And I've heard Thick Shades use this one, which is the Luke, I am your father, and everybody knows that. And the fun thing is, there is a video where James Earl Jones is quoted, and James Earl Jones was the voice of Darth Vader. He was quoted as using it. I think he said, when I was told, I read Luke, I am your father, I said that can't be true. Now, all that shows is that James Earl Jones was similarly caught up in the common misconception, because everybody's using the phrases, and people are probably seeing him and saying, you know, on the street, Luke, I'm your father, and that common misconception's heard by him. And James Earl Jones has done many, many, many more films than that, and he may not remember in that long soliloquy he gives in that exchange with Luke, as we all know, you probably have seen Star Wars, that where we think he says, Luke, I am your father, it's actually a common misconception that he actually says, no, no, I am your father. He doesn't say Luke, it's no. And so let's watch the scene. I'm going to share so you know that reference. I'm going to share this spectacular sci-fi scene of one of the greatest films ever made. Here we go.
Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father.
He told me enough. He told me you killed him.
No, I am your father.
There it is. No! You're lying. All right. So
It's not true.
we don't have to go that far, but let's look at this again.
He told me you killed him.
No, I am your father.
Now, here's the fun thing.
No, I am your father.
One of the fun things I have with Thick Shades here in his argument that develops his Mandela effect theory is that he'll say, we know that it's impossible that this Darth Vader said no, because he like nods in the affirmative.
I am your father.
No. He told me you killed him.
No, I am your father.
And Thick Shades claims that, and others, I think Mandelaites, they claim that if it was truly no, when he says that he'd be shaking his head no and not sort of nodding in the affirmative. And the funny thing for that, as most of you probably know, is that the actor who's portraying Darth Vader in costume is not the same as the voice, James Earl Jones. It was David Prowse, very tall man, I believe, who has recently passed away. He played Darth Vader. He might have relayed some of the dialogue himself, but it was dubbed. So to claim that the actor in there didn't say the right thing or do the right motion doesn't make any sense, because the voice was dubbed in. Hopefully that makes sense. So that concludes essentially what I wanted to present about the Mandela effect and how it's ridiculous. Those are 3 examples. I imagine as we go, maybe somebody will show me a better example, and then we'll try and refute that, and maybe I won't be able to. So I'll enter into this with an open mind. But based on these 3 examples, you can see how ridiculous the claim is. As I've said, not only from these examples, how ridiculous the claim is from a biblical perspective, because there are believers, I am one, who think the Mandela effect is absolutely silly, and we don't see the change, and yet we believe in the truth of the gospel. And those who claim that 2 Thessalonians applies would be saying that I'm not a believer, would be saying that all those who don't see the change are not believers. And that's a ridiculous notion. So, did not get any of the people that I invited to come in. So let's see if anybody has shown in the commentary. And the only one I have here is Happy Jesus. Hi, Happy Jesus. God cares about titles of popular fiction and sparrows. Matthew 10:29. Well, sparrows and the hairs on your head, Happy Jesus, yeah. He cares about you. But I don't think that he would send a strong delusion with movie titles and cereal boxes. And the notion is just as silly as the notion of a flat earth. So hopefully there will be a response video for this. I know perfect timing for Thick Shade's current hangout. I give him something to talk about. And I'm anxious to see how he addresses each of these points. I imagine it will go somewhere like this. Some wicked, strange, crazy man laugh, the use of the word idiot, the use of the phrase, and this guy calls himself a lawyer, and more crazy, wicked laugh. Something there, maybe an added idiot that I forgot, 2 or 3 more. And then some of his cronies laughing along with him. That's probably how it's going to go down, and it won't address the substance. And, you know, that's kind of what I see that Mandelaites are about. It's not addressing the substance, wanting to see these crazy signs and wonders so that their absolutely ridiculous notions as to end times can be proven for themselves. And so that's all I can guess. There you have it. Responses down below, would appreciate them. Thank you, Happy Jesus, for being here. If God cares about hair, what is wrong with the Donalds? That's a good point. And that might justify why, that might be proof that the Donald is in need of some Jesus. And I think that's probably true, just as much as you, Happy Jesus. So God bless you all. Have a great day. I look forward to seeing the response from my man, Thick Shades. And I'm sure there'll be a part 2.